Order the special city council meeting of Monday, April 12th. I, Elizabeth B. Tisdall, Mayor of the City of Evanston, pursuant to Council Rule 16.3, call for a special meeting of the Evanston City Council on Monday, April 12th, 2010 at 7:30 p.m. in the City Council chambers at the Evanston Civic Center, 2100 Ridge, for the purpose set forth below: public comment, water and sewer fund, capital and operations plan, Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Program Review. City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Alderman John Patisse. Here. Alderman Nguyen. Here. Alderman Wilson.
Here.
Alderman Holmes.
Here.
Alderman Tindem. Here. Alderman Grover. Here. Alderman Rainey. Here. Alderman Burris. Here. Alderman Fisk.
Here.
9-0.
We have a quorum. First item of business is public comment. I have 3 speakers. I'm going to call you all. You can just come up and wait your turn. Lynn Green, Junad Rizki, and Sari Cattison Shapiro.
Good evening. I won't take too much of your time. I wanted to address on behalf of my neighbors and myself the issues of these revised monthly sanitation fees and services. A number of people have expressed a great deal of concern about them. They are a problem, especially for senior citizens, people on fixed incomes who are already struggling with their water bill, their water sewer bill. These fees will be added, and one of the questions I have been asked to ask you is if indeed they cannot pay these extra fees and their bill gets behind, is their water going to be cut off? This is a big concern for people over 80 years old. They really can't afford to pay any more than they're paying. They're desperately trying to stay in their homes. They're trying to be independent. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And this is not helping. Also, have you decided or figured out some way for there to be a special fund to assist these people so that they can keep their homes and stay in their homes? A lot of these people have lived here forever. I mean, they've been here. Their fathers were here when Evanston was established. I've known them my whole life, and I'm a lot older than I look. So really, I'm talking about people who have really desperate needs. If it costs more to recycle, people are going to stop. It's hard enough. It's gotten us so long to get people to actually recycle, to actually say, come on, let's do this. There was a big thrust back about a year ago to get your big new recycle cans so you could recycle more. It was a big contest to see who would get theirs first. And it's like you didn't tell us that if indeed we got the big recycle bins, that then we were going to have to pay more to recycle. That little detail seems to have been a little bit left out. I was a little surprised. I don't have a problem with recycling. I'm all for recycling. But something interesting is happening. Rather than paying for the recycle bins or paying their fees, people are beginning to put their stuff in other people's barrels. This is a problem. And you know whose barrels they're putting it in? The senior citizens, the ones who can't watch, the ones who can't pay attention. So again, it's the same people that are being victimized. This is also happening with the garbage. The last thing that I want to address is we have tried to start a beautification program in our area, and one of those aspects was to go neighborhood by neighborhood to get people to try to really get their yards together. Not a lot, just cut your grass, trim your bushes, pick up the trash, plant a few flowers, pull out dead trees, and now to find out that they're going to have to pay, in addition to buying the bags, an additional $1.75 in order to get those bags picked up. That's enough for people to say to me, you've got to be kidding, I'll leave my yard like it is. So I respectfully ask that you would please relook at this. Maybe to you it's a small thing. Maybe it was discussed over and over again, but I think you need to understand that most of us, including me, have extremely busy lives. Some of us are taking care of these senior citizens, okay, and we're hearing about this over and over again and feel really helpless to do anything because we're doing all we can. So I would ask that you please find a way, okay, to help us out here, because we really just can't afford it. And I just made a comment to another gentleman. I said, really, if you just want us senior citizens and people like me to move, say so. Just say, you know what, just move. Okay, you can't afford to live here, but be honest about it. This is a wonderful place. I love it. I was born, raised, and grew up here, attended all the libraries and all that stuff, attended the public schools here. I'm home, and I'd like to finish living here. I don't want to leave, but if I can't afford to live here, if my mother can't afford to live out her last days here, then it's time for me to go. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Alderman Rainey?
No, don't leave the podium. I just want to share something with you. And I think Colleen probably was going to share the same thing. First of all, there is no charge of any kind added at any time for recycling. You can have the little tiny recycling cart, you can have the medium-sized cart, or the giant-sized blue cart. There is no charge for that. Second of all, for garbage collection, many seniors are switching to the 65-gallon can. If you keep the large can, I think it's 95-gallon can, you will be charged an extra $5.90 or some odd cents for that can. But if you call up Suzette Eggleston or Suzette Robinson at the Public Works Department and ask to be delivered a brand new 65-gallon garbage can, your charge will remain the same as it's been for a year or so. No additional charge. The only thing that is an additional charge if you don't do that with your garbage can is the $1.75 leaf bag charge, the sticker. And while we're at it, so that's not going to be too bad. I mean, I understand about the leaf yard waste. Maybe there is something we can do about that. But the other two issues, garbage and recycling, should not be a problem given what the facts are. However, I've heard of a problem today with yard waste stickers. They are not sticking on the bags. They are not sticking on the bags, and people are seeing $1.75 fly down the alley, soaked in water.
Or put on somebody else's bag.
Or, well, they're going to have to go get some Elmer's glue to do it because the sticky stuff on the stickers that we're selling are not sticking. So anyway.
I just want you to understand that the people that I'm talking about working with, it's hard enough to get them to do their yards.
I understand
It's difficult to
completely what
get
you're
them
saying.
to
Yeah.
buy the bags in the first place. But to say to them, oh, not only do you have to buy the bag, but you need to go get a $1.75 sticker for each bag you
Yeah,
put
I
out.
understand.
And literally, the looks I'm getting are just, I'm like, I know, just, you don't have to say it, I can read it in your face. And so it's almost like being hit in the stomach after working so hard on something. And we're trying so hard.
Maybe what we could do, Madam Mayor, maybe what we could do is, for example, we have the taxi cab coupon program, so seniors and disabled can ride around in taxi cabs at a discount rate. Perhaps we can come up with some plan for yard waste, because the way your neighborhood looks really makes a difference. And maybe we can take a look at that.
That's what we're trying to
Thank
do.
you for the
desperately.
suggestion. Alderman Burris?
I was actually going to say pretty much the same thing Alderman Rainey is saying, in that we really need to get out the information clearly to folks, because I appreciate you coming, but, you know, when you said that their recycling is being charged, and which just isn't the right facts, we're clearly not doing maybe a good enough
But the
job.
cost of the bin per month is on the water bill.
No, it's not.
It's not anymore? You
No.
took it off?
Never
They're-
was
they're-
on.
It was
No.
on mine.
Well, then that needs to be brought up, but I think we need to just do a better job maybe of educating, because clearly you do know a lot about the city, and you have, you know, more than probably a lot of folks do. And if we're not getting the right information out and people think that they're being charged for something that they're not, I don't know if it's more on the website or more, other aldermen
Well,
sending
please
out blasts.
understand that most of these people are older. They're not reading websites.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. Whatever it is, we need to get better information out, because what you're presenting is, and then going out on the airwaves here, is inaccurate information, and we just need to make sure that we're getting the right information out. So I really appreciate you coming tonight. Thank
So
you.
except whatever charge was on the bills last year will remain on the bill. There are charges on the water bill for those kinds of things, but the new bins are not, nobody's being charged extra for those.
Okay.
Like we are being charged extra for yard waste stickers. That is an extra charge.
Okay, that was not clear.
But otherwise, everything else is on the bill, remains on the bill if you reduce to the 65-gallon can.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And it probably doesn't have any holes in it, so it would be a good thing to do. Why is this happening?
Thank you. Alderman Holmes?
I just wanted to say, Mrs. Green knows this, but for the listening audience, we will be having a ward meeting this coming Thursday, and Ms. Robinson will be there to help clarify more of the issues. We've had a lot of phone calls about the charges, and she is coming on Thursday at 7 o'clock at Fleetwood to address some of this with some of our seniors. And we are very much aware of the issues, and I appreciate Alderman Rainey's suggestion about maybe some kind of coupon for them.
Thank you. Alderman Rainey?
While we're talking about explanations, there will be an 8th Ward meeting at the Levy Center Tuesday night with Suzette Eggleston Robinson as the focus of attention.
Thank you. Mr. Iskey?
I'm going to address issues of capital planning. Over the last year, studies have been presented suggesting water bill increases approaching 40%. I would like to know how much of this would be real capital costs versus loss of revenue and excessive operating costs. If I'm not mistaken, I do not recall reductions in the staff in the water department. Recently, the council approved increases in the water bill by taking on waste charges. I suspect had the city privatized operations in the waste, our costs would have been less. It is my belief 10 to 20% of capital costs here are not well used or mismanaged. Let me outline a few issues. Too many studies, incomplete poor capital planning, lack of consistency between years in the capital plan, lack of priorities and council members' interference, staff agendas not in the public interest, unrealistic cost and multi-year estimates not in alignment, project overruns and costly cost-cutting mistakes. Last time I heard the presentations on items in the water department, I saw several unrealistic costs, which appear to me would add unnecessary capital. As we know, the city slowed down capital borrowing, which I suspect may have much to do with projects behind as cash problems. In conclusion, I am willing to offer some discussion and training in my home to several council members within the limits of the Open Meeting Act about capital planning, because I feel we have some very serious problems here with how all the capital is being done throughout all this. So, anyway,
Thank you. Next, Sari Caddison Shapiro.
I wanted to talk to you about the what's known as CIPP, which is the sewer relining process that they're doing in Evanston. They did this in 2006. This is how I have experience with this. I had walked my dog down by the beach, and you know how you can sort of smell something, and you think, gee, I shouldn't be smelling that for an extended period of time, like when you're filling your car with gas or something. They were putting something in the ground, and then they came to my house. I live in a sort of prominent part of town because I'm kitty corner from the pumping station at Lake and Elmwood, and they said that they would relocate me because I have a dirt floor in my basement, and their only cure is like for the odors that come into your home is cleaning out the traps in your basement. We have no drains, no traps to clean out. And they said they'd give me the heads up when they would start by my neighborhood. So a couple weeks before they were supposed to give me the heads up, I was walking the dog really late at night at 11 around Dempster and Elmwood, and they were injecting this styrene gas, which is another name for vinyl benzene, which is on the EPA's list of the most carcinogenic substances, 125 chemicals that are listed there. And the next day, it was all in my house, and I could taste it in my mouth. And I called up and I said, you were supposed to give me a heads up when you did this. And they said, well, we're 2 blocks from your house. And I didn't really understand how that could be. And I, asked my neighbor to come over, and she smelled it really strongly in her house, but she didn't smell it in hers. In my house, she smelled it. Anyway, they're doing it again, and they're doing it 50 yards from my house this time. And they've taken a different tack, Kenny Construction. Instead of telling people in their newsletter that it's styrene that they're dealing with, they just called it a resin. And I know that this is the cheapest way to do it, but it's certainly not the safest way. And there's concerns not just with the air that comes into residences. This happened at Harvard, and the health department shut down the whole operation. It's with the runoff from the resin into the water table, and there's been fish kills from it. And I have these pages that I went to print up, and my printer sort of conked out towards the end. But there's a blog, and I know blogs are not trustworthy to a lot of people, but this particular one has very good links to information from the EPA and from other states as to what they've done. For the Virginia Department of Transportation says, for example, they shut down this project in Virginia. They said VDOT should suspend styrene-based CIPP, cured-in-place project pipes, and undertake additional study of its installation and use to gain a better understanding of the technology and its potential impacts. And then they said contractors must hire independent labs to test the water before and after each project. So they're concerned about the water, not the air. But Kenny is the only people who have anyone who said they would measure it in my house, because I'm the one who spoke out about it. But they have no plans to measure it in the air, just in the neighborhood. And it really permeated the whole neighborhood last time. And they're also injecting it right across from the front door of two families that weren't here in 2006 and have little kids. And I just think that the cheapest way is not the way to go, just because it's cheap. I think that we should be safe instead. OSHA has regulated this so that the workers can only be exposed to it for 8 hours at a time. But when they do this process, they're going to do it 5 days around the clock. And after they inject the styrene with these other chemicals that Kenny's person who said they were a scientist said were company secrets as to what the other chemicals were. They heat it with a steam heat, and the vapors escape into the air. It happens every single time. So for you who are on the internet, I urge you to go to trenchless.blogspot.com. They have really good links. That I tried to print up a lot of the information from it, and obviously, when my printer conked out, I didn't have 12 copies for everybody, and I just have this. So,
thank you very much.
You can pass it. Along with it is the newsletter from Kenny Construction that shows the circled places are the injection points.
Mr. Stonebeck, would you have an answer for some of these concerns?
I don't have an answer for all the concerns. I can tell her, though, that in speaking with Kenny, they will not be injecting that at the pumping station now. They've changed their location where they'll be doing that work. So they will not be inverting right in front of your home or diagonally across the street from your home. So that will be taken care of. Evanston's used the CIPP lining process since 1986. We have had concerns with people having the odor in their home. It is a very pungent smell. You can smell it at 2 parts per million. It's not harmful until you're in the hundreds of parts per million, but you can smell it at a very low threshold, and that's what people do smell. We've never had anybody get sick or hurt or reported to us any illness after all the work that we've done on this.
But there's no plans to monitor it as far as outside air or the water table.
They do not need to get a permit to monitor the air per the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. That was verified.
And Mr. Stonebeck, is this a City of Evanston project that's currently going on?
No, this is a project being completed by the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment. City Manager, next is Water and Sewer Fund.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, good evening. Thank you for agreeing to come together this evening in a special council meeting to talk about 2 items. One is our water and sewer fund issues, as well as then a program services review.
Sorry, City Manager Alderman Burris says.
No, I was saying this gentleman was raising his hand trying to get your attention.
Sorry, I didn't realize you need to sign in.
Oh, all right. Yes, go right ahead.
Sorry, Mayor Tisdale.
My name's Harry Major. I live in Wilmette. I own some commercial properties in Evanston, and
Could you give us your address, please?
2211 Crestview Lane, Wilmette.
Thank you.
When I read that you were having this hearing, I've had some experience with some water issues in the past, so I want to take the opportunity to at least ask you to consider them when you're doing the law. They're not as maybe critical as some of the things that have been brought up tonight. But one, I've had 3 or 4 incidents over the years where there's leaking water. Either a pipe has broken or something like that. And 3, 4, maybe 6 months elapse before I find out about it, and it's usually noticed with a much larger water bill. Then I've called the water department, and they, we identify where the problem's coming from. The thought that I have, if something like what they've explained to me is sometimes like someone that owns an apartment building may have one tenant with a toilet that's leaking, and it goes on for months as well, and it's cost the guy sometimes $10,000, $12,000 bill. And the bill is being calculated by the normal water charge plus the multiplier for the sewer. So what I would ask is, and it's happened to me about 3 or 4 times, the bills maybe have averaged 2,000 or 3,000 when a month where they normally might be 400 or 500. So I've called the water department. They said there's nothing they could do about it. And what I'm asking is that you consider giving the water department the right to look at these things when they happen, and maybe just charge the user for, even if it's been leaking, for the actual water charge, but not for the multiplier, because it's an unintentional action that's occurred. Is that sort of understandable?
Thank you very much, yes.
Okay, that's one. And the second thing I'd like to just mention, because of the buildings I own, there's 3 of them that have laundries, commercial laundries. And again, they're not, on the same basis of hardship as the elderly, but laundries basically are not great money-making operations anymore, coin laundries. And so again, when you're determining how the charges are being made to businesses, that you at least consider that, and because there's a extra penalty for a laundry because of its large use of water, and the businesses are not able to recover those utility charges. So I just thought I'd communicate that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Alderman Rainey?
Well, I think, Mr. Major, aren't you our landlord?
Yes.
You are. Township offices. He's the landlord there. I have to tell you about experience that I have that is exactly the opposite of yours. I know of many, many people who've had water leaks that result in their readings being extra high, where the water department, especially Kevin Lucas, who is sitting right here, is always on top of that, notifying people all the time with alerts that your water usage is way above normal. And so, I mean, I don't know why yours hasn't been caught, but I know of so many others that are caught. And it's just because of that reason. The average water usage is so extraordinary that they notify you.
Well, in the past 5 years...
Have you never been notified?
In the past 5, no. And in the past 5 years, I would say it's happened to me 4 times. I just paid it. It wasn't like life and death. But it just got me thinking, when I had called the water department, and they were very nice, they just indicated to me there was no way they could modify the calculation of the charge.
No, not once it's been done, that's
Yeah.
for sure.
So,
But they
that's
can
all.
catch it early.
Yeah. Well, what I do now routinely is I actually have plumbers go through my buildings every 6 months or to do just that, to just check. But I thought I'd mention it for other property owners.
Thank you very much. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. We're here this evening with two reports, one talking about water and sewer fund issues, the other to request your consent to move forward with a program service review of our Parks, Recreation, Community Services Department. We'd like to start the evening with a presentation regarding our water and sewer funds. Through the operating and capital budget, we purposely put aside the issues of our sewer and water funds until after the operating budget was completed because I believe the issues that we're facing in both funds are significant and require real special attention from the council. So what we would like to do this evening is to walk through what we see are those challenges in both funds, and they're different challenges as you will come to see. In addition to the dollar and cents challenges in the funds, there are infrastructure issues. And while we have been, I think, been better than many communities, we still have lots of work to do, specifically on the water side, but also still on the sewer side. One of the factors that really comes into play, and a factor that has not been recently discussed by the council, is the impact of declining water sales on incoming revenue. And those are for multiple factors, which Mr. Stonebeck and Mr. Lyons will get into. But on the good side, we're pleased to see that our residents are using less water. On the bad side, our residents are using less water. And when we have predicated many of our projections over an extended period of time based on water sales either remaining constant or actually increasing, those declining water sales have had an impact that we need to address. So as we look to how to address them, what is the best way to do that? And we're going to share with you this evening not one recommended plan, but a variety of scenarios that we hope will be the beginning of a discussion for the City Council to look at. We also feel that it's important to come to you and not simply say the solution is raising rates or looking at additional funds on the property tax. We think that there are other more creative ways that we can employ that will help us get through this. And again, while we're not alone and many are providing the same, facing these same issues, I think it's incumbent upon us in the city of Evanston to be more creative than our neighbors and to look at opportunities, especially with our water utility. We have something that many communities do not, and that is our location next to Lake Michigan and a very robust water treatment facility. And I believe that we need to leverage the asset of that water treatment facility to the benefit of all Evanston residents by looking to see if there are other customers outside of our jurisdiction, in addition to the two groups that we currently serve water to, that we could hopefully make significant dollars with. In addition, I think there's also issues, and we'll talk about them this evening, to be smart on some of the costs associated with the operation of water. And one that we would very much like to pursue is green energy opportunities for the water treatment plant. It's one of our largest users of energy, and if there are creative ways for us to lower costs associated with that, we would like to pursue that. So you're going to hear from us this evening. I can see the next slide. A summary of where we are with both funds, a discussion of our wholesale water customers and opportunity to expand the number of wholesale water customers that we have, public outreach efforts to impact the consumption of water, and then also to talk about alternate energy sources. We would hope that this evening we would have the opportunity to make these presentations, get your feedback, and then come back to you in a few weeks to continue the discussion. It's a lot of information to take in one evening. There's a lot of history associated with the policy decisions that have been made in both our water and sewer operation, which we feel it's important to get everyone on the City Council on the same page with before we would then come back for an additional discussion on next steps. It's not our intention to implement or to ask you to implement any changes to the rate structure or to our property tax in order to deal with these issues until January 1st, 2011. So this is something that we would hope that we could have a discussion over the next few months, have the decisions from you, put those aside, move forward then with the discussions of the operating budget for fiscal year 2011, and then in January of 2011 move forward with whatever decisions the council makes in order to address some of our sewer and water fund issues. So, Madam Mayor, members of the council, that's just sort of a brief overview. I'm pleased to introduce Dave Stonebeck. You all know Dave. Tonight he is here for the first time with a new title, and that is he's now Director of Utilities. I have made a change of our Public Works Department. We've in essence spun off our water and sewer operations into a separate operating department under Mr. Stonebeck's direction. As you know, and as we'll hear this evening, given the complexity of issues facing us, I want to make sure that we have a senior manager in place who can directly deal with you and the other senior management of the city on these issues, and I'm very pleased that Mr. Stonebeck has agreed to step up and take on this important new role. So, Dave, congratulations again, and
thank you. Thank you. Going into presentation, we're going to start with the sewer fund. As you're all aware, we completed the long-range sewer project. I did want to point out, though, that during the construction of long-range sewer project, we added a new sewer system basically to handle stormwater, and we addressed the combined sewer system in some manners, but not completely. So the long-range sewer project was constructed over 18 years for a cost of $210 million, and during the past several rain events, we found out that it is working very well. However, we did not address the combined sewer system. This map, which is somewhat hard to read, shows some lines that are in red over on here. All those lines are at least 36-inch in diameter or larger. They're constructed of brick or segmented clay tiles, and they're over 100 years old, and they are in need of rehabilitation. There's a total of 7.2 miles, and we estimate that the cost to rehabilitate those would be $14.4 million. In addition to that, we're aware through closed-circuit TV inspection of smaller diameter sewer mains of another 3.9 miles of sewer mains that need rehabilitating, and that would cost approximately $1.3 million. The sewer fund right now at $17.5 million is 81% of that is due to debt service. So there's $14 million worth of debt service out of that $17.5 million. So that's what we're struggling with right now. This next slide shows the sewer breakdown in fiscal year 17-18. As you can see, by that time, the debt service cost is reduced by 50%, and our expenditures are down about $6 million. So this is more or less a short-term problem that we're having right now in the sewer fund. We need to get over the next several years of the very high debt service as a result of the implementation of the long-range sewer project. To give you a history of the sewer rates, our last sewer rate increase was in 2004, and it's established right now at $3.94 per 100 cubic feet of water purchased, and then the average single-family residence is paying approximately $417 a year for sewer service charges. When the long-range sewer project first started up, we were changing the sewer rate almost annually to meet the current debt service. That as new loans were acquired and the debt service started, we would adjust the sewer rate accordingly. And we had rate changes as low as 7 cents a year to 30 cents. In 1 year, it was 72 cents additional in sewer rate. So in 2000, the finance director at that time proposed sewer rates that would stabilize over the next 4 years. And that's indicated on this slide, where ordinance was passed in 2000 establishing sewer rates for the next 4 years through 2003. However, in 2003, another ordinance was passed, which then slowed the rate increase. As far back as 2000, we indicate we were probably going to need to go to $4.13 a 100 cubic feet, and they got stretched out to 2005. And then in 2005, we had a cost of service and fee study done, and based on the projected water sale at that time, it looked as though we could stay at the $3.94. So The problem with that was that in 2005, we were selling approximately just over $4 million, 4 million units of water. In 2009, and 10, we're projecting that we're going to sell 3,600,000 units. And actually in 2009, we only sold 3,300,000. So it's a little bit lower. It's 19% lower, and therefore, if we were going to meet this offset of less water sales, we would have had to add a 19% rate increase to just match that. So water usage is down in Evanston by 16% since 1998. Concurrently, at the same time, Skokie's water usage has decreased 26%. So I know there was some fear that it was our rate, the cost of our rates, that were causing people to use less water. Skokie did not have the same type of rate increases during the same period, and yet their water usage decreased significantly. The Northwest Water Commission water usage decreased by 13%, but their population that they served during that time, unlike Evanston and Skokie, which was stable, the Northwest Water Commission population increased by 11%. CMAP indicates that Chicago's consumption has decreased 18% since 1990, with a concurrent population growth of 24%. So they added new wholesale customers. DuPage County came on during that time. So although they're selling to 24% more people, their water usage actually went down 18% as well. So this slide indicates, the dark blue indicates our actual water sales in 100 cubic feet units. The purple line indicates the proposed water consumption done by VK in their 2005 report, where we decided to stay at $3.94. The yellow line indicates what Malcolm Perney indicated water sales would be in their 2008 study, and that was a very slow, gradual increase based on projection of how many new condos we would have in Evanston, how many new businesses we have. And then you can see in the dark blue line, in 2009, we even served less or produced less water. What we are basing our projection on in the graphs that you'll see in the future is a light blue line. And you can see that there's a magenta line there that is, when you use Excel, you can actually get a trend. And that trend indicates actually that we would produce more water this year, because you can see every few years there is a peak where we have a warmer summer, but then it starts dropping off even faster than what we projected. So 3 years out, we're pretty much at the same location, though.
And Dave, before you go, if you go back to that slide, it's probably the biggest slide of the night is this one slide. The VK report is the report in which the council, when last discussing rates, was that those were the assumptions. Again, other reports that were done on the yellow, and then the dark blue is the actuals. So this is a significant issue that is causing part of our challenges here, and that is what projected was at the time in 2004, 2005, and then what we've actually seen over the last 4 or 5 years.
Alderman Rainey?
Well, we need to talk about this a little more. If it is not the rate, which I maintain for years is the reason why water consumption went down, I felt that we had reached a tipping point. If it's not the rate and water's going down, population is going up, water usage is going down. What is the reason? There has to be a reason for this.
The reason, in our opinion, is due to the water sense devices. Everybody now, all the new condo associations, everybody thought we would be selling much more water to. But because the new fixtures that go in, the shower heads, the toilets, everything like that uses a lot less water. A toilet might have used 30 gallons per flush, is now using 2.5 gallons. So shower heads are coming out. The latest thing that's coming out on the market right now are washing machines. They're using far less water than what they used to. A lot of homes have dishwashers in them. They use 4 gallons for every load compared to washing dishes by hand, where you probably use 30 to 50 gallons. So it's the water conservation devices that are being put out that are significantly reducing the water consumption. And again, that's just not in Evanston. It's a national trend that's going on.
So this is just another example of how going green is really rather expensive.
I would concur with that, yes. It's great for the environment, it's great for our next generations, but when we commit it to $14 million in debt service a year by borrowing the money that we have, we are put in a tight situation.
Alderman Burris?
I actually just wanted to follow up on the whole notion of the education of conserving water. I think has had a big impact, as well as probably the three largest water entities that use water here in Evanston have done a concerted effort to reduce their water usage, and that might be something to look at if it's possible to determine how much the university and the two hospitals are using, because I know for sure that they've done an education campaign and really have changed their fixtures. The house I just recently moved into, all the dual flush toilets, it's a very energy conservative building, so I think that will continue to be the trend.
And we believe so, and we do have those statistics that you're looking for available. So as indicated, Malcolm Perney did their cost study in 2008, and even in that rate study, they indicated sewer rates were adjusted. Sewer rate increases should be done, and they weren't done by ordinance. And then the water sales have declined since that time. Based on the FY9-10 budget that was approved, we felt at that time that there would be $200,000 at the end of the FY10-11 budget, but based on the actual unaudited FY9-10 revenues and keeping the FY10-11 budget the same, we will be in approximately $1 million in the hole at the end of this budget year in the sewer fund. And that's shown on this next graphic here, where we thought we'd have $187,000 at the end of the budget year, best guess on estimated sales and expenditures. And then when we got the actual numbers in through finance, you can see that we're about $1 million projected to be in the hole now. So we did try to save money in the sewer fund. I know the actuals compared to our estimated expenditures show higher, but if you looked at our budget for 09-10, we were at $17.8 million, so we still were $638,000 under the budget amount for the sewer fund last year. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Lyons.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. What we're going to go through in the next 10 or so slides are several options for the sewer fund. As the manager pointed out, this is not just one solution. There's not just one solution to try and get us through our debt service bubble, if you will, which goes until about 2014-15. So I'd like to walk through these, and of course, the options do get a little complicated as we go forward. Happy to take questions as we do so. So again, as Dave pointed out, we're looking at that $1.1 million deficit. So given our current rate, our options are when we get approximately $140,000 or a little less, $130,000 per every 1% of rate increase for sewer, we would need approximately an 8% rate increase or a $1.1 million addition in debt service to cover our shortfall for the coming year. And we say debt service in that we still have a de minimis amount of capital projects along the lines of $900,000 that we are doing this year, so we can issue the debt. In future years, we're looking at a similar solution, and you've heard me. I know this sounds a little bit odd for me for the past year and a half, anti-debt. But in this situation, I'm going to go through a few scenarios where I think we can look at it, and a lot of it has to do with our debt structure that we have currently, that we may be able to stretch this out, but it does get a little complicated, and I'd like to walk all the way through it first. So option one is to issue $12 million in bonds over 3 years and this is, again, don't issue debt before we need it, so we keep our interest cost as low as possible. The debt service on these bonds will reach $963,000 after that third year of issuance, not immediately. And what we're proposing is that we would need a rate increase of 6, 7, and 8%, as well as this debt issuance. And this is assuming, I'll get to the slide, that everything stays within the sewer fund. So the sewer fund operates like it always has, as an enterprise fund, and takes care of its own business completely. And what I would like to point out is in this scenario, we slowly move the sewer fund back up to a unrestricted fund balance that it has been recommended that we need for that operation when we're spending the amount we're spending, and when we have a fund that's worth over $230 million, our assets in that fund per the last annual financial report. So again, we start to move back away from a zero balance, and we move up to that $3.6 million fund balance, which is also in line with Malcolm Pierney recommendations, even given, if you look, I'd like to make sure everyone notices that across the top here, continually decreasing pumpage. So, I'm sorry for those that Dave and I will both refer to water quite often when we're talking about sewer. It's just that we use water gallons pumped as the measure for sewer usage, the usage actually incurred. So we'll always talk about the amount of water in the system as a measure for the amount of sewer services consumed. So again, as you can see also, then the sewer rate would go from $394 up to $483 in the final year in order to keep the fund stable. So option 2, issue $10 million in bonds.
Alderman Rainey has a question.
Well, I just have a comment. You're using the water usage to explain the usage of applying the rate to sewage is really inaccurate, because so many things we use water for never go into the sewer. For example, all summer long, when some people wish to water their lawn, that water is not being flushed down the drain. And there have been calls over the years to figure out a way to allow for maintaining your garden and things like that without being charged, without having the sewer rate applied to that water usage, because it's not using the sewer. It's a false charge in the summer.
And in many cases, a lot of communities, when they figure their sewer rate out, they take the rate based on the winter usage in order to determine a proper sewerage rate, if you will. With what we have gone through in Evanston since 1990 with the large capital improvements, that may have gotten a little bit lost in that change from our pre-major capital program. But almost all sewer rates are determined on the non-summer utilization rate. So the rate is set a little bit lower, saying that, yes, we know that there will be pumpage of water that goes onto the lawn and does not go into the sewer. Now, in the case of Evanston, where we have combined storm and sanitary, a lot of that still goes into the sewer systems that are maintained in this fund. In cases where the sanitary sewer and the storm sewer are completely disconnected, then that's not the case. So in this option 2, what we're looking at
Sorry, Mr. Lyons.
That's fine.
Alderman Jean-Baptiste.
Marty, it still sounds somewhat arbitrary, the way we measure the usage of sewer. Are there some alternatives out there that other municipalities are using?
There are other alternatives. You can set your de minimis charge at a higher level, saying the usage of the system is X. So what's our minimum for sewer? So you could set a minimum for a sewer charge that says the minimum is $15 a month for the sewer charge and then take the rate down substantially in recognition of the fact that not all of the water that runs through the system is going to be used in the sewer system. The water, some water will not need to be cleaned, for lack of a better term, or in the case of our combined services, will not need to be swept away through the sewer system. It goes right back into the ground. Alternatively, like we're proposing tonight, there are communities that put it on the property tax. It is on another source that, or is more of a fixed fee instead of that based on the amount of flow of water.
Okay, I'll listen.
Alderman Grover?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Lyons. Just to clarify, your assumptions in these options for the water usage are based upon the staff's projections then?
That's correct.
The blue line on that chart, the way it trends downward, but not the other. Thank you.
So again, what we're looking at in this case is a smaller amount of debt service, but in this case, we're also looking at that combination that I just referred to, that the sewer fund would not cover all of these costs, and that we would in fact look at a property tax levy that would not be abated for the $10 million. So that would result in approximately an $803,000 debt service levy that would accumulate over the 3 years, but at the end of the third year would be approximately a 2% increase on our current total tax levy. So this is what that looks like graphically. And again, in this case, we're keeping the sewer fund is brought back to the fund balance recommended so that we can keep capital moving forward. I went and looked at the 1990 audit just to satisfy where we were. In 1990, the sewer fund had 17 million in assets and the water fund had 40, thereabouts. And in 2009, the water fund had 65 million in assets and the sewer fund had 230. That's that $200 million we put into the system. Well, we need to maintain that or it will also start to deteriorate. So we are looking at having the proper amount of reserves to maintain the sewer system that we have put in place, and as Dave Stonebeck noted, the further large diameter sewers that we need to repair. The last option that we have in here is, again, it's issuing debt, and I'll get to the logic behind this right after I go through the slide. It's $17 million in bonds over 4 years with the debt service paid for out of the tax levy in the general fund. It will result in about a 3.2% increase, but only a little bit less than 1% per year of an increase to the tax levy, but no change in the sewer rate. In this scenario, we're basically saying that we're going to take the debt that we have on the books and we are going to stretch it for a portion of it for 20 years. And while intrinsically I have a concern about that, I've been meeting with our financial advisors as a part of our review of financial advisors. We're selecting a new group, and one of the things that they brought out in a couple of occasions was we have more than approximately 60% of our principal of our debt is going to be retired in the next 10 years. So while we do have a lot of debt on the books, a lot of it will come off within 10 years. So if we were to stretch some of that in order to get past in the sewer fund, the 14 million, 14 million, 14 million, 14 million, 4 years of those high debt amounts, we would pay some interest for that, but we would avoid any need for a rate increase. So again, that does go on to the property tax bill. So that's what this option looks like. As you can see, we don't quite get the sewer fund as high as we had it before with the $3 million reserves at the end of 15-16, but it is still stable throughout that period. Anyone have questions about that one?
Alderman Nguyen?
Yes, Marty, just so I can more clearly understand, of the three options, the first one does not add to the property tax bill, is that correct?
No, it does not.
Okay. Then the second one, the option 2 does what to the property tax bill?
It raises the tax bill by 2% over a 3-year period, so a little bit less than 1% a year.
All right. And then the third option?
Is before you at the bottom of the bottom of this graphic where it goes 1%, then 0.8 additional, then 0.7 additional, and 0.7 additional over 4 years.
And then if we, over the next period of time, deliberated upon this and decided on either option 2 or option 3, we would then be deciding as a council that over the next 3 years, that increase would occur in our property tax.
Actually, what we're really recommending in this case is that we would like to look at this as a 5 to 6 year view, but in any given year, if we end up with usage higher than anticipated, we've been able to delay another year especially in the sewer fund. Any year where we have usage back up at historical levels, we would not put the rate increase, or we would not issue the debt unless the fund balance required it. So this is just, we just cannot go with one more of those flat line views. It hasn't happened in 5 years. We need to recognize what happens if for the next 5 years it keeps going down. And so that's what
I think that's the best way to look at. I mean, we have to take a worst case scenario approach to this. I just wanted to understand that aspect of it. And then in terms of, could you give us, maybe you're about to do that, the pros and cons of each of these options? I mean, we've seen what will happen, but compare them against each other.
Well, here's at least on a cost basis, the pros and cons. So when we look at the cost per year, you see that option 3 has the lowest cost per year, just because we're spreading out that cost over 20 years. So it is a long cost per year, but in the case of options 1 and 2, with the rate increases, as our debt continues to decline from all of the major projects, there's the possibility that we would be able to reduce the rate. But I'm sure there's a hearty amount of skepticism over that it would actually happen. So we wanted to just point out what would happen if we raise the rate, and where would we be at the end of that time frame of, we went out 6 years actually in our planning. We went out a little bit further as well, but type gets a little bit small when we start going out 10 years on the screen.
Can I ask another question, Madam Mayor?
Go right ahead.
Barney, what am I missing that this is the cost per year?
Well, here's when you look at when I say cost per year, it's the 5 year is we tried to say, well, what would be a 5 year cost? So that's the third column where it says total additional costs over 5 years. And then cost per year is just the average over 5 years is all we took there. I'm sorry?
So the additional property tax charges are for the total amount of the 5 years. That's what you're saying?
The $234 that
Right.
you see there, yes. And again,
and so you're dividing that by 5, and that's how you're ending up with okay.
And again, that's for that house with a $10,000 bill. I picked that number so it'd be easy for anyone to scale it to whatever your tax bill is. The math is our portion of the property tax is 20% of the total, and then we look at what an increase from the previous tables, a 1%, a 2%, a 3%, it calculates out to this level. So yes, there will be some properties with higher and some with lower based on the taxable value of the property.
Thank you. Alderman Rainey?
Well, Marty, I like the part about option 3 where we bill property taxpayers for their share of the sewer debt, and we apply a reasonable amount to actual water and sewer bills of not-for-profits. We cannot bear the burden of the not-for-profits who tend to be the largest single users of water. And in reading through this, it became apparent that evidently there had been some agreement with our legal department or our financial advisors that we can do a two-pronged billing system.
We have found examples of that.
Let's go with it. What are we waiting for? First of all, the water and sewer bill, and I know I'm jumping way ahead here, but the envelope that comes to us that contains the water bill now has so much piled onto it. It's, in some cases, I know that people who've been in their homes a long time, it far exceeds some people's mortgage payments. It's beginning to be a burden, and we just have to stop it. We have to give relief to people who pay property taxes. And if this is a way we can do it, fine, I have no problem with it. We have to pay the debt. But I think the way to go is transferring the sewer debt to the property tax bill and charging not-for-profits. And you used the term reasonable charge. I think the charge should be the actual charge. If that's unreasonable, so be it. We've all been paying an unreasonable sewer charge for years.
And that is where we have it set. We think that based on the amount of utilization that we're looking at those users, we tried to back into what would be that reasonable charge. So it was not just pegged at, it's in a future slide at 25%.
It's an actual usage charge.
We're close, and we know that'll vary. As one of the aldermen pointed out, NU and the hospitals have been a leader as far as cutting back. They've been putting a lot of effort into a lot of their infrastructure for this. So we know that even doing this, there will be decreasing revenues from those sources. That's okay.
But the burden will be spread equally among all of us water users and sewer users. It won't, the burden, if we only put it on the tax bill, then we assume the burden. And I don't think any of the not-for-profits would ever expect that. So.
Now, and just so we keep rolling, I'll go through. So we talked, this is the lower rate on there would be the 646 is what it would be for sewer option 1 or sewer option 2, just to give folks an idea. And then here's where we compare on our sewer rates with other communities in the area.
Excuse me, Marty. Alderman Grover, did you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Lyons. My quick question is, and you may have already said this, if we are largely relieved of our debt service obligation around 2014, 2015, but we wanted under options 2 and 3 extend the property tax charge beyond that, say, what'd you say, 5 or 6 years, then what happens in those 5 or 6 years later when we are relieved of this debt service obligation? Will the charge remain or?
It will remain. Picture, we had it up there at one point in the pie charts. And in the pie charts, if you noted, what we had was the sewer debt right now is 14.2, and it'll top out at 14.5. But by 2017-18, it's 7.7. So it's literally in half. And what we've proposed here is the maximum was approximately a 1.4, sorry, I'm going to go back so I have the right number. Option 3 is, my debt service is in there at $1.3 million. So that would put us at 8 to 8.5 million is our debt then in 2017-18 going out, but still decreasing because the major projects are coming off of our books. So, and again, a lot of that is the IEPA loans that we have. So you may not see it if you're looking at other documents. It won't show up as our general obligation debt. It'll show up as our IEPA loans, but they're the exact same instrument in that they're 20 years. They're just a different issuer, we're the issuer, but a different buyer, if you will, and a different interest rate.
And under option 3, then, what are the implications of having an unrestricted fund balance $2 million short of where you'd like it to be, or where you've projected on the other options?
Well, I think the big thing is that we're going to continue to stay in our maintenance mode, and we would stretch out those large diameter sewer maintenance projects. That we would continue to do what we could on those, but that those would we wouldn't work on them quite as fast as we would like to, or I should say, according to our depreciation and proper schedules. That if we should be doing them on a 100-year basis, we won't quite make that. But that option 3, again, as pointed out, we have the opportunity there to keep that 394 rate right where it's at. So again, just to follow through for the folks who have not seen this yet, our rate is 527, not the highest rate, but close. And what we're looking at is that on the property tax side, also there's the tax benefit from going through this process that you would not see as far as the sewer rate. So again, as Alderman Rainey pointed out, we're looking at an additional reasonable charge on the sewer bill to not-for-profit customers.
Alderman Rainey, do you have a question?
Yes. Can you tell us why Lincolnshire has a sewer charge of 1,000 gallons of $563? Did they just build a new sewer? Or?
Well, they have both, if you see both above and below us on that graphic. So Lincolnshire has its rate of 512 in the village, and then there are some folks just outside the village where they are stretching their system.
Did they just hook them up or something?
I think it's, Dave, you might, I know I had that exact same thing happen in a previous community where the way that literally the terrain worked, it was easier for my village to take care of the other villages' water and sewer rather than build lift stations and pump and drain and do all that. So we took care of their additional amount. But we also said, well, our tax rate's not the same as yours, or other revenues aren't the same. So there was a slight surcharge to those folks who are not in our community. And that's what they're doing in Lincolnshire.
So is there really any point, other than so people can't say that we're the highest in the world, of making these comparisons? Because all circumstances are different in all the different communities. I mean, how do we compare ourselves exactly to some other community? I mean, look at Lake Forest, $1.15, or $1.16. Wheeling's $1.15. Why are they so low? And I mean,
in many cases, they did. If we take the bond, if we take our debt service completely out of our equation, we would be that low.
But that's the point. That's the point I'm making. There are reasons why there's such a vast difference in.
And Alderman Rainey, I think the other piece too is the number of properties who do not pay property tax. And so in those communities with the lower rate, I would venture to say 95 to 100% are paying property tax on some level, and that percentage is smaller here in Evanston. So paying water bills? Well, but because those communities are choosing to have some of those costs on the property tax, that model doesn't necessarily work here in Evanston. And we can certainly get you more details on those communities, but that would be my guess.
Alderman Rainey, I'll take a stab at that question too. From serving on the water committee for the National Mayor's Conference, there's a move nationwide to try to get communities to bill appropriately for water, to bill what it actually costs. So that would accomplish two things. One, the community would have enough money to repair their water plants and not have water leaking out of ancient pipes, and also people would conserve water more because they would have an idea of what water actually costs. Very few communities are billing what it actually costs.
So to continue on with the not-for-profit, what we're looking at is focusing on the largest 25 to 30% of the customers. And why one of the reasons is that the very small not-for-profit, as far as the ability to pay, we would run into an issue there. But if we are increasing the sewer rate by 25% for this group, it could potentially generate $500,000 to $600,000 annually. And when we look at that and compare that to the debt service for option 3, for instance, of $1.3 million, you get an idea of the ratio of what will the property tax paying part of the community be paying for keeping our fund balance where it is, and what would the not-for-profit group listed above also be paying. So there's a sense to the ratio between those two.
And Mr. Lyons, I think this might be a good point to address this concept in more general terms. Mr. Farrar can perhaps come up to the microphone. As we've been working on these rates, and certainly have hearing previous council discussions about just sort of the public policy philosophy of putting more rates on the property tax bill, we've had to grapple with what to do with the large number of nonprofits. And we've asked our city attorney, Grant Farrar, to look at the law and case law as it currently stands in the state of Illinois to see if there were options. And we were able to come up with an option that we would feel comfortable pursuing at the council's direction. And Mr. Farrar, maybe you could just give a sort of a general overview of where that is, and if the council wishes to get more into it, we can.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. With respect to the legal review that we've undertaken, I've spent several weeks looking at a lot of the applicable case law. Water rates have been the subject of great litigation for approximately 4 decades. With respect to the issue that Mr. Lyons is setting forth in the slides before you currently, the issue of instituting a more reasonable charge on a non-for-profit entity is something that is fully supported by the case law. Essentially what we're seeking to do is we would be charging similarly situated entities that have a non-for-profit status a reasonable charge for their consumption. Based upon the case law, how that all works out is as long as the rate is reasonable and supported by the facts, which in this instance would be debt service, the need to maintain infrastructure, and these reasonable spreading forth and institute of charges that are equally situated between the non-for-profit entities and property taxpayers, that's all fully supported by case law. And we've done a great deal of review on that, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Jean-Baptiste.
Grant, what is the sort of concern then that's been raised in the history of the case, the discussion of the cases, is that there's an equal protection kind of argument that not-for-profits have been raising?
That is typically the most common argument. You can raise an equal protection argument, which deals with the Constitution, or you can raise a common law argument. But in terms of equal protection, that's why reasonableness is such the touchstone. For example, in one of the cases that is somewhat dated, the charges that were sought to be levied, and it had nothing to do with not-for-profit status, but the charges that were sought to be levied between one particular customer and another customer were 150% in excess of what one other customer was being charged. The court still found that reasonable based upon the evidence that was submitted in that case. So essentially, we're talking about a much, much smaller degree of difference, which I think is very, very important as we go forward and apply that to the case law. Because the courts, while of course equal protection is decided on a case-by-case basis and it's always fact-specific, the courts give us guidance in terms of what a reasonable rate structure is and what may be considered unreasonable and not rational for purposes of an equal protection argument. In terms of the facts that are before us and the funding scenarios that are before us, we have a very, very reasonable scenario here that is fully supported by the facts.
Okay. Why do we want to focus solely on the 25 to 30% of these customers as opposed to a larger percentage?
Well, that's, I think, in part determined by usage. Also, if you think of an entity, a set of entities like this, and to break them into quartiles, 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%, you're talking about larger not-for-profit entities, and you're talking about smaller not-for-profit entities. So, of course, that number, I guess, is fungible. It can move based upon the political will of the council. But at least at this preliminary juncture, when I talked with Dave and Marty and tried to apply the legal conceptual framework to the implementation of a rate structure, we thought that at least thinking about quartiles, and in this instance, the top 25%, that was at least a good starting point. Because we're talking about similarly situated entities in terms of their usage, in terms of their composition, their profile, for lack of a better term.
Do you think at that percentage will be able to survive a challenge?
Absolutely. Okay. And I would respectfully submit that other quartiles, if that was indeed something that we would want to move down and increase the scope of this reasonable rate charge, that would also be supported. But I think 25 to 30% for discussion purposes at this juncture is fully consonant with case law.
But if you feel you could support it, I mean, I'm not sure. On the one hand, I hear the argument, if you think we can survive the challenge best at this level, I can understand it. But you also said we could support charging the second quartile from, and be able to survive. Why not add them to the pile?
Well, that's part of the
discussion.
The discussion, correct.
And if I may, one of the things when we were doing the research, pulling the data, quite a bit of work as you go further and further down the number of not-for-profits that you bring into the mix. So by looking at the data set that we had, we were reasonably comfortable in coming forward. As we'll note later on in the analysis, if we're doing a more detailed rate study and continue to refine the numbers, we could come back with that and do a risk return so that we're bringing more folks in. Are we bringing a higher risk of issues on the legal side, and is it worth it to us for how much additional revenue that's coming in?
Okay, so, I mean, when it's time to act on it, I'd like to hear further analysis.
Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So if I'm understanding correctly, actual usage is equitable. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And my understanding also is that the Mayor's Budget Task Force received this list of the 1,000 tax-exempt property owners. These are the not-for-profits. Is that correct? And are we on the council also going to receive that list? I would like to see it.
Certainly.
Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Mayor. Do the cases that give us the ability to add this additional charge for nonprofit customers, do they refer to nonprofit status of the customers, or is it really the property tax exempt status of those property owners?
There actually has not been, in the cases that I've looked at so far, an issue that is directly on point with respect to a non-for-profit entity such as this. The only case that is out there that did touch upon it was related to the city of Palatine a number of years ago, and actually this was one of the touchstones for our research. In their rate structure, they explicitly set out property tax paying rate, non-property tax paying rate, and that degree of difference is far and above anything that's currently before the council tonight. And that really informed a lot of the deliberation that we put into this issue, and also It also informed a lot of the case law, because I really think that this is a situation that is coming to the head. There was also a recent, it's sort of related, but there was also a recent Illinois Supreme Court case that came down about 6 weeks ago that dealt with the nonprofit status of a hospital and how they were now going to be having to, they had 43 tax-exempt parcels, and the Illinois Supreme Court said that that charitable status would no longer obviate them paying property tax. So I believe that based upon that decision, there is a shift in the case law here. And this is one of these situations where I think it's going to be it's going to be reaching far afield.
We have two different lists in Evanston. We have the list of Evanston's nonprofits, not all of whom are property owners, and then the list of property tax-exempt property owners. Okay, thank you.
Alderman Burris.
I wanted to follow up on something that Alderman Jean-Baptiste was saying. So with this, are there not-for-profits that own property that will be not paying water and sewer? I mean, I understand what you're trying to hit the biggest ones. Pardon? Yeah, so I mean, what I'm understanding is that, so there's of that 1,000 list, there may be not-for-profits that are not going to be paying at all. And please correct me and explain how you're going to hit that list.
So for the not-for-profit entity that has a 10,000 square foot structure on an acre of land, if it was taxable, they might be paying $25,000 a year in taxes. I mean, so they're paying that in property taxes, but they're not paying anything right now. Therefore, putting a debt service on that's funded through the property tax would not impact them at all. So in their case, we would have the reasonable charge of 25 to 30% directly on the sewer bill for that parcel, but not for the parcel right next door that was the headquarters of a for-profit corporation of equal size. And I can't say equally valued property because there's no assessed value on one, and there is an assessed value on the other.
Can I follow up? Yes. That's where I'm getting a little worried, and following up on what Alderman Jean-Baptiste said, that, and obviously I'm not an attorney and none of you here are, that's where it gets a little sticky on going this route. Either we're going to go all the way with all the not-for-profits, because if we're differentiating them, my fear is it's opening us up to a legal challenge. And I mean, once again, you know, maybe there is case law, but just to really protect ourselves in that regard, we need to have a real clear understanding of our where we draw the line, and is that really supported by case law?
And Alderman Burris, members of the council, perhaps we're getting a little bit too far afield with this one particular slide. This is all a part is doing is modeling, and so what we wanted to get a sense of is if we looked at the 25 to 30% largest, how much money would that generate, and could this then allow us to move forward with the money that we need? It's certainly going to be the council's policy to set whatever rate structure you like. This is just so we would say that this is the amount of money that we would be generating. So I apologize if we're getting too far afield on this one particular slide.
Alderman Rainey.
Well, I don't think we're getting too far afield, and the reason there's such excitement in the air here is because for the last 25 years, we've been told that this is absolutely, positively illegal and not allowed, and so it is an exciting new concept that some of us have been dragging behind us for years and years and years. However, I think we have to stop using the term not-for-profit. We have to use the term property tax exempt water user. And it's not the not-for-profits, it's the property tax exempt users that we're interested in dealing with here. So
that's correct.
Anyway.
We will change our terminology from here forward.
Because there are not-for-profits who are paying property taxes.
And you are correct, it is property tax exempt. Property tax exempt.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Alderman Fisk.
So excited.
Yeah, just one last question. Is it accurate that most of the 70% of the lowest, the smallest tax exempt property are small churches? Can you just give us a sense of what?
And I don't think we have the information accurately available this evening. If the council wishes to pursue this at your next discussion, we'll have a very detailed breakdown.
Alderman Jean-Baptiste?
That the bottom line is that we need to collect the obligations. It's just how we collect it, okay? So if it is, if we go strictly through property tax, then some people will not, pay that. But if we find some other methods of collecting that obligation, then we should be able to reach every user. So we have to think that through as we move forward to avoid the kind of pitfalls that we will get into. I think that's the key thing.
Thank you. Alderman Holmes?
What would be helpful for me is, while we're focused on the 25%, focus on the largest 25%, if we could have the other 3 areas so that we could also see, from the 25% that is the smallest, and then in the middle, if we could have those figures, I think that would be helpful, and also it would help us to see that it's across the board, and, we're being fair to everyone.
Thank you. Alderman Rainey?
I just want to remind people who are concerned about the little churches are paying water and sewer right now. So there should be no change, and if anything, if this works out correctly, they might even be getting a little bit of a break in the final analysis. But they're paying now, so they're not going to be exempt in the future, and they're not going to be overburdened if the charge is reasonable.
Thank you. Mr. Lyons, I see no more lights. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm back. We're going to move on to the water fund now. It's a different picture than what we had in the sewer fund. The sewer fund, we were basically driven by debt service, and the water fund, we're basically driven by a proposed capital improvement program. As this as this slide would indicate, approximately 40% of the water fund budget is due to the capital improvement program, with a significant amount for water main and also a significant amount for improvements at the water plant itself. In fiscal year 17-18, it's pretty much the same story. We are still largely generated by capital improvements at both the water plant and for water mains itself. In the water fund, the last rate adjustment was in 2006, but it really was revenue neutral. It actually provided a break to the small residential users. Their bills actually went down approximately 15%. So in the way I look at it, the last real rate increase occurred in 1998. And right now, the average single-family home, or the average family resident, is paying approximately $148 a year for water. In the 5-year CIP, we are looking at some very expensive projects. We have projects both at the water plant and for the distribution system, and I'd like to just move on with what some of those are. Another thing to take note on is that when we do improvements at the water plant, based on our contract with the Northwest Water Commission, approximately 58% of the cost of those improvements are paid by the Northwest Water Commission as part of their contract over the life of the asset. So when we build something that has 100 years, it will take 100 years to get the money back from the Northwest Water Commission. But something like the SCADA system, which we're proposing to do, only has a 20-year life, and they would pay the 58% over that 20-year life. So it's based on the depreciation.
Alderman Rainey?
Would this be a good time to address the complaint we hear from many of our residents that why does Skokie pay less for water than Evanston? And is that true?
That is not true, and there is a chart somewhere that I would get to. It's on slide 47, I believe. I'm sorry, slide 46. Evanston currently, and again, these were all converted to cost per 1,000 gallons. Evanston is currently at $2.03, and Skokie, the resident in Skokie, is paying $3.53 per 1,000 gallons. What we sell to the village of Skokie, the rate that we sell to the village of Skokie is less than what Evanston residents pay, but they have to maintain their distribution system, and they add cost to that. So they are not, a resident in Skokie is paying more than a resident in Evanston for their water bill.
Everybody hear that?
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, but as I explained, improvements that are made at the water treatment plant, a large part of it is paid by the Northwest Water Commission over depreciation, as a depreciation cost. But improvements to our distribution system within Evanston only provides for the citizens of Evanston, and therefore the cost to improve it is borne just by the residents of Evanston. Some of the major projects that we have upcoming at the water plant, the first two have been projects that have been deferred for several years. The SCADA replacement, the initial SCADA system was installed in 1983, and we can't even get parts for the existing system anymore.
What's a SCADA?
SCADA is a supervisory control and data acquisition system. It is a large computer that either monitors or controls every aspect of the water treatment plant. The filter rehabilitation, there are 6 filters that were constructed in 1964, and they have not been rehabilitated since then, including the actual building that those filters go in. The roof is the original 1964 roof, so it needs replacement as well. The building needs tuck pointing. So those two projects, the SCADA system is estimated at $1.3 million, and the filter rehabilitation for those 6 filters is estimated at $2.3 million. We also have other large projects. The zebra mussel control system, originally installed in the 1990s, has failed, so it needs to be replaced to be able to protect our intakes. The flash mix, all right, zebra mussels are in the lake now. They filter the lake water. They like flowing water, and they love going into intake pipes because they attach themselves to the intake pipes, and the water flows by them so they can filter the water and get their food to eat, nourishment. And so when they build up on the inside of the intake, they increase the friction it takes to get the water through the pipeline because it's a rough surface compared to the smooth pipe, and you have less water available to come through those pipelines. It's not like it would plug off our intake pipelines because they're large diameter, but in small, for like steam plants and things like that, they have 6-inch pipelines, and they have completely plugged off the pipeline. So this is something that we need to do. The flash mix is the basin where we add chemicals into the treatment process. We don't have a redundancy for it. There is newer technology that's available for this, and that's what we were looking to modify on that. The AMR is the automatic meter reading system. This is a very good system for the city of Evanston. It allows us to read water meters and find leaks and call and advise residents that they potentially have a leak in their homes. But the battery that's in that device, the gray device that's on the outside of your house, only has a life of 7 to 8 years. We've put them in approximately 6 years ago, so we need to start replacing those so that they will continue to work. The good part on that is the new devices have batteries in them that have a life of more than 15 to 18 years, so we won't need to do it as frequently in the future. And then a lot of the water plant...
Dave, Alderman Jean-Baptiste.
Yeah, Dave, this reading system, it seems that the last few months I've been getting more complaints about water bills increasing unreasonably. And according to our troubleshooter, you know, some of the readings have been off. Do you know anything about it?
To my knowledge, the readings are not off. I guess I really don't understand the question.
The reading, the system that we have that's able to read the meter, the water meter.
Correct. The meter
Apparently-
actually reads the amount of flow that goes through it.
Right. Apparently, from what I understand, there's been some misreads that have led to a lot more billings than water usage. Some people have reported vacant property with no leaks, but significant increase. And when they've approached Joe, Joe has indicated that there have been some problems in the readings. Maybe Kevin?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dave. Kevin Lucas, the Assistant Superintendent for Water Production. I'm kind of the person there that has been overseeing and looking at all of these issues that you're talking about. And all that we can say is that we verify the read on the meter versus what we have from the automated meter reading system. If they are the same, then the water did go through the meter. We don't know why and we don't know how. Potentially, it could be a toilet that's running that someone doesn't know about. They discover it, they shut it off. We've had many cases of people who've gone on vacation where what's the last thing you do before you leave? You use the restroom, and the toilet runs the whole time they're gone. They're gone for a week to 10 days, and their water bill is significantly higher. I have looked at all these with Mr. McCrae, and I can't say that I've seen any discrepancies in what the meters are reading. It's just that the water has gone through the meter. We're just not sure why or how. So we've been trying to work with the residents, and especially those with vacant properties. Whereas the vacant properties, oftentimes it is a toilet because people go in there, they show the property or something along those lines and don't realize that a very slow and almost, non-audible leak in a toilet can still result in an extra $20 or $30 on a bill.
Okay. Well, for those of you who are listening, please continue to call Joe McCrae to get some assistance in trying to look into that. Shani?
Shani Jackson.
Okay, Shani Jackson. All right.
And again, the equipment is reading properly. The MTU device is sending the signal of what the meter is actually reading. There's a dispute as to how the water got through the meter, but a meter is a positive displacement type of unit. It cannot automatically. Something has to spin the dial, move it to make the dial move. So water has to go through the meter for it to actually register water usage.
Alderman Grover?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Stoneback. If you could, while you're going through these items, Mr. Stoneback, just give me the numbers attached to each one of them. I know it all adds up to 15.9, but if, to the best, refresh my recollection as to
I don't believe I have that.
cost to control zebra mussels. And
I don't have that information with me right
all right,
now.
that's fine.
We will definitely provide that to you, though. The last item up there for major capital improvement costs is our concrete rehabilitation. The water plant was constructed over many different generations. The original filters were constructed in 1913. We have 1923 construction, 1948, 1964, 1982, all of which we have a reservoir from 1937, all of which the concrete is deteriorated at different levels and in need of some rehabilitation. So that type of cost is very expensive. It was based with Malcolm Perney. They projected the cost based on their experience working in other plants. We actually just recently completed a study on the 1913 portion of it, and the engineer that did that work estimated the cost at just under $1 million. So we feel that the cost that Malcolm Perney indicated in their cost of service study is appropriate based on the work being completed several years out in the future, within the next 5 years. The distribution system, again, over the next 5 years, we're looking at $17 million worth of improvements, which will allow us to improve 1.5 miles of water main a year, which is 1% of the water main system. So again, this is significant. The water mains have an estimated life of 100 years. Evanston has 157 miles of water main. 52 miles, or approximately 33%, are over 100 years old. And if we replace 1.5 miles a year, it will take 35 years to replace them. We have another 39 miles that are 80 to 99 years old. And if we won't start replacing them for 35 years, it would be 2045. They'll be 115 years old to 134 years old. And when we do a mile and a half of those a year, there'll be an additional 26 years old. So some of the water mains that we'll be replacing will be close to 150 years old by the time we get to them, if we do a mile and a half a year, which is what we're recommending at this point in time. So this map indicates, and I know I've shown this to council before several times, the red lines up there indicate the water mains that are currently over 100 years old. The orange ones are 80 to 99 years old. So you can see that there's a large amount of infrastructure out there that is old and should be replaced in a succession, rather than what I'm hoping to avoid is that we wait and then we have a big problem and we wind up what we did with the sewer project, replacing a lot of water main just within 15 years, which is basically what happened with the sewer system. We waited since 1930 to 1990 to start doing the sewer system, and then we did it in big chunks. So it'd be better to try to spread this out over the years, and that is my recommendation. Historically, the water treatment plant improvements have been paid through annual revenues and also through bonds. And then again, the Northwest Water Commission, through depreciation, pays approximately 58% of the asset. The distribution system improvements are paid through annual revenues, and issuing debt for the distribution system is good. But again, if we continue to just issue $3 million of bond every year, it would become very expensive for us to do. So Mr. Lyons is going to come up and talk about some of the options that we would like you to consider. Oh, I'm sorry, there is one more slide for me. You got this one?
Leave me with all the good news.
I just put my wish list.
So going forward, what we're looking at is the water fund has been able to maintain stability in great measure due to the pumpage levels. And with those dropping off and revising our calculations, you're looking at, with no changes, a fairly grim picture. That net deficit, that's an annual deficit. So the cumulative deficit would be all of those numbers across the bottom combined with no changes and with the needed capital. So for Dave's wish list kind of goes away if we don't do something, because we won't have the dollars for the capital infrastructure that was on the previous slide. So water revenues, and I want to take a step back a little bit. When we're looking at the water fund, we're really looking at the sewer fund in 1990. We're on the verge of about to embark on some major capital. We need some major capital improvements here. And so the idea is, how will we strategize for our revenue increases to cover these needed capital? And we're looking at a lot of options, of which we'll talk about tonight, the wholesale sale options. But we'll also have quite a bit of the responsibility, at least for the distribution system, that will need to be borne within the water fund and not go out to other customers outside of the city. So the water revenues, again, what we're looking for, because we have a high sewer rate and we have to keep that there for the next 4 years at least to retire that debt, it's difficult to go ahead and raise the water rate as well by a substantial enough amount to cover the entire cost that we need. So option one is looking at $18.1 million in bonds over 4 years, and similar to option S1, where we had the fund itself covering the debt service costs. So this will result in a debt service cost of about $1.45 million at the start of the 5th year, and that will again be a 20-year bonds for all of that case. Now, to the extent possible, we might be able to reduce that a little bit in both water and sewer when we're able to get the IEPA loans, which are, instead of 4%, 5% are down at 1% and 2%. So we, of course, will apply for those whenever possible. What we're also looking at then is an annual rate increase of 10, 5, and 3 starting January 1st of 2011, and that last sentence shouldn't be in there. We have removed that in our calculations, and it shouldn't be, it's not in your next comment. The last sentence, I mean that clause that says followed by annual 10% rate increase. So that is not in the analysis. So it goes 10, 5, 3, and then 0, 0, 0. So please eliminate that. We will, of course, when you look at the next graphic, even a 10, 10, 10% increase in future years isn't enough to cover our situation. So we do have alternative strategies, but when you take a look at, for option 1, you see we plug along at 10, 11, 4.9 million in unrestricted fund balance, 4.6, 4.1, 1.0. We drop down in 13, 14, but then when we hit 14, 15 with no bonds and a continually declining pumpage rate, we all of a sudden have a $9.5 million ending fund balance projected for 14, 15. And that's just a reflection of where we're at with total pumpage compared to our total capital and operating needs in the water fund for all years. So in the first 4 years, we're proposing bonds, again, because the water fund, we didn't reference it recently, but earlier tonight, the water fund, which has, if it's of a similar size as the sewer fund, should have $250 million in assets. Well, they're only valued at about $65 million now. They've been depreciated. But with a fund that big, we have $600,000 in debt, or debt service presently. So we're on the beginning part of that capital replacement buildup, and how we go about replacing that capital with a mixture of debt and revenue increases, outsourcing some of our, contracting out some of our services such that we're providing water to other entities to help cover our costs. We'll be using all of those strategies, but in option 1, keeping everything contained in the water fund, you see that we have a strategy to get us to 13, 14, but then we have serious issues. Option 2 is similar to the option sewer 3, where we say slightly less in bonds, 17 million, because in this case, we literally don't need the bonds to help keep our fund balance, because we're going to, again, move these bonds to the general fund as far as debt service. So remember, we had that scenario of just under 1% per year as an addition to the levy for sewer. We're looking at something similar if we send the debt service to the general obligation bond portion in the general tax levy. So in this case, we'd have approximately just under 1.4 million in debt service for the 20-year cycle for those bonds. I just want to point out that, so what does that do for us? Well, instead of that $9.5 million issue in 14-15, we're down to 7.1 million, a gap that we're looking at that point. And we're also in a little bit better shape in 13-14, where we still have almost a $2 million reserve in the sewer fund. Again, when you look at this, the bottom line on this chart shows you that over the 4 years, this would be about a 2.5% increase. And you compare that with the sewer, which was 3.2 in one of the options. So you're talking about a 5.7 increase over 4 years to the tax levy in this strategy of putting the debt onto the tax levy. So again, similarly with the other analysis, you look at, in this case, we have the situation where the difference in the rates, there's not that much. So in this case, our cost per year is actually higher for the W2 option, but it does provide a little bit more stability in the water fund over those 4 years. And again, we would also, I don't need to, I know we're running a little long on time, so I'll go through these, the rate comparison slides. It is good news. I hate to go through good news. I want to stop here and say, compared to our sewer situation, our water situation, we're at the bottom at $2.03, and even with our increases, we'd be at $2.41 and still be well at the low end for water rates. for the comparable communities we looked at. And this then is one that I know that a lot of people look at as, because it's what's going on in the household, where are we at with the combined? So on a combined basis, we're at $7.30, and with the changes, we put in the options of the sewer 3 option and the water 1 and 2 are the same options. You'd see where our rate would be compared to others in the area. So again, to come back to it, this is not an Evanston issue only. Other communities are facing the same situation. As I think we noted, well, in this slide right here, the second bullet point, that's over a 50% increase that the city of Chicago has doled out in 3 years' time with the compounding impact of that increase. So it is an issue that many communities are facing for a variety of reasons presently.
Alderman Rainey.
But that's to their wholesale customers. What's a wholesale customer?
For instance, the DuPage Water Commission represents all of the DuPage County communities, so they're all taking, in this case, DuPage isn't a good example. They were shielding the communities, but now they're going to have to raise the rates. But this also happened to, I'll pick on Niles or Des Plaines or any of the communities that currently have direct contracts with the city of Chicago. They received that 15, 15, 14, and that went right straight through to their residents, or they ate it, the given community did.
Because the city of Chicago, in many cases, doesn't even yet have water meters on
Right.
residential properties. So that's kind of a party.
The way the city of Chicago's rate is set up, though, is that their residents and their wholesale customers all pay the same rate. So even if they don't have a meter, they were charged a certain cost based on the number of people living in the home. That cost went up to 15, 15, and 14%.
But it's about time, probably. I mean, because I know the city of Chicago residents are getting a break on water compared to us.
Correct. And they are the one community that right now is still cheaper than Evanston at $2.01 compared to $2.03 per 1,000 gallons.
So does being a wholesale customer to Evanston appear attractive to those wholesale customers in Chicago?
Yes, yes, it really does. That's the next portion of the presentation that we have. We just had a brief summary. As the manager noted, we're not talking about recommendations at this point, but so in the summary, you just find what happens if we pick a given option. I think the tables are much more informative regarding that, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those two summaries, and we'll go right to the wholesale issue, and Dave Stonebeck will take over again.
So Evanston currently has 2 wholesale water customers. It's the Village of Skokie. They've been a customer since 1944. Their last agreement was signed in 1997. It's a 20-year term, expires in 2017, and they are currently paying approximately 94 cents per 1,000 gallons at the wholesale rate. And Northwest Water Commission became a wholesale customer in 1985. Their agreement expires in 2030, but they have the right to shorten it or lengthen it by 5 years, and they have to inform us of that. And they're currently paying approximately 53 cents per 1,000 gallons, and that averages out because of our rate structure with them. That's not always a constant number. It can fluctuate up and down.
And Dave, I think before we get off that slide, let's go back to that slide, because certainly this is a point of contention for many in the community regarding what the 1,000-gallon charge is for both Skokie and the Northwest Water Commission. And to remind everyone, the Northwest Water Commission is a consortium of 4 communities, Palatine, Buffalo Grove, Arlington Heights, and Wheeling. Dave, what is currently the city of Chicago charging its wholesale customers?
Chicago charges $2.01 per 1,000 gallons.
So $2.01 for those wholesale customers versus 94 cents, which we charge to the Village of Skokie, and 53 cents to the Northwest Water Commission. Clearly, those are not market rates, and there is money to be made, we believe, by growing the system. Those are long-term contracts that we have, and certainly we're prepared to talk about the consequences in terms of those contracts and many changes that we might be able to have as part of an executive session. But clearly, the market is higher given the number of communities that are currently wholesale customers of the City of Chicago. Go ahead, Dave.
This graphic represents our current wholesale customer base, and the blue line there represents the 60-inch pipeline that goes out to the Northwest Water Commission reservoir, which is located in Des Plaines, and then they repump the water from that reservoir to the 4 communities that comprise the commission. There are some potential wholesale water customers right now in the very short term. Our existing water treatment plant has excess capacity. We have contract obligations to the Northwest Water Commission. We have to supply them 55 million gallon a day on their peak day, and that's all we have to provide them. And when you figure it out for Evanston and Skokie on our peak days, there's still about 15 million gallons capacity capable at the water treatment plant without expanding it at all. So we potentially have the infrastructure at the water plant to do that. If we partner with Skokie and or the Northwest Water Commission, or both of them, we might be able to sell to some of the communities that are parallel to their systems. In the immediate future, that requires us to complete a hydraulic analysis to make sure the impact on the Evanston distribution system, the Skokie distribution system, and or the Northwest Water Commission system to see if that's feasible without putting a detrimental impact on those current customers. And then we also need to investigate the existing wholesale water contract that those municipalities have with the City of Chicago to see if there's wiggle room in there for us to be able to provide them some water. In the midterm outlook, a lot of those communities that have contracts with the City of Chicago, their contracts are 10-year in duration. They expire later on, 8 to 9 to actually 10 years away from now. But it could well take us that amount of time to get contracts developed with those municipalities based on if they want to participate and purchase water from Evanston. We would need to increase the treatment plant capacity, and we would have to devise a way of getting the water out to those communities. Again, that could be the installation of a large diameter transmission main, either by Evanston or by partnering with one of our existing wholesale customers. Here we believe the action items that are necessary is to hire an attorney to negotiate contracts. City Council had previously passed a resolution authorizing us to go out and hire an attorney, but we were requested to go and visit these communities first to make sure there was some interest. And I can tell you that we went and visited 5 communities, and all 5 communities showed some interest. A lot of them showed a lot of interest. So that's what we're trying to deal with. That resolution, though, did not allow us to hire an engineering firm. In my opinion, the attorney, to be able to negotiate, needs to know the cost that would be required to improve their water treatment plant, to install the transmission mains, so that they could get a feel for what the cost would be, and then do a cost analysis, see whether it was worthwhile or not, and when the payback would be. So that's an action item that I think that we also need to do as well. In the long run, we could potentially look to supplying water to a large joint action water agency, or JAWA as it's called. They're located further out, and again, they might want to partner with the Northwest Water Commission. They take a considerable amount of water. It wouldn't be a water main. I think it would be a tunnel installed, and their contract runs considerably longer, but again, with the cost involved with that, we would significantly have to expand the treatment plant. We'd almost have to double it. We would want to start talking with them now to see if they're interested, and if they are, we would have to start working on that and designing the systems and the improvements needed to be able to do that. Some of these communities borders that are in this JAWA border to Northwest Water Commission. So when their contract comes out, it may be feasible for them to want to go to the Northwest Water Commission instead of their current organization. So there's lots of different opportunities that are available out there, and we just need, but in my opinion, it's going to take time to negotiate, get everything set up, get commitments, and then start developing the plans that we need and the improvements at the water plant and the distribution system to be able to provide the water to them at that time. So that's what I have on this for right now. If there's any questions.
And Dave, I think you've got the next slide, which has the map.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And if I can just talk a little bit, because as Dave indicated, Dave and I, and in many instances, Mr. Lyons, we have met with the village managers and public works staffs of Morton Grove, Niles, Park Ridge, Des Plaines, the Jawa, am I missing one?
Lincolnwood.
And Lincolnwood. And those, if you can see where Evanston and the village of Skokie are, Lincolnwood, Morton Grove, Niles, all border the Skokie system. And so as we have talked, and I've also been in touch with the village manager in Skokie, because Skokie could very well be a very important partner for us on the short and medium term to get water to Lincolnwood, Morton Grove, and Niles. So we are going to very actively pursue with the council's guidance the options of using Skokie sort of as the hub of a wheel, and then using existing spokes that are part of the Skokie system to potentially feed Lincolnwood, Morton Grove, and Niles. So they're all three customers of the city of Chicago. You can see clearly that Chicago is contiguous with Niles and Lincolnwood, and I'm not quite sure how Morton Grove gets their Chicago water.
They border as well.
So it's just hard to see in this particular map. But again, growing the water business is a real key element to our future infrastructure needs. One of the reasons that the city of Chicago have raised their wholesale rates as much as they have, and this has been a stated goal of Mayor Daley, is to take those additional monies to invest in infrastructure in the city of Chicago. If we're able to grow our water sales, and again, starting with those communities, working with a partner with the village of Skokie, Niles, Morton Grove, and Lincolnwood, that's a first step. Now, you see that the transmission main with the Northwest Water Commission, which actually goes to the village of Des Plaines, another community that we have visited. There's a lot of interest by the Northwest Water Commission to have a second connection, because right now, really, those four communities are all fed through one main transmission line. They're interested in a second main transmission line. So while we struggle with the terms of our agreement with the Northwest Water Commission, they are interested in that second line. And there are definitely opportunities for us to talk with them about the construction of a second transmission line sooner than later. And that would then help us not only provide additional water to their facilities, which are located in the village of Des Plaines, but also to potentially pick off as a customer of the village of Des Plaines, and potentially then also Park Ridge. Park Ridge is interestingly located with Chicago on a couple different sides. So Park Ridge is probably the best equipped with the water infrastructure from the city of Chicago of all the communities we've talked to. But certainly a second transmission main to the Northwest Water Commission not only provides that opportunity of redundancy for their four communities, but then it does open up opportunities to other communities further west. So I think we've talked in general terms for a long time here in the city of Evanston about pursuing these initiatives. My recommendation to the council is we really need to stop talking, and we really need to take the next steps. And as Mr. Stonebeck has indicated, that would be an engineering study in partnership with the village of Skokie, and they have given their general concurrence to be cooperative as part of that engineering study, and also to be very aggressive with the Northwest Water Commission, those four communities. I have visited there twice. I have visited their board once. My understanding is I am the first city manager of Evanston ever to visit the board of the Northwest Water Commission, and all the times we have done business with them, and they are interested in growing their business to serve those communities further to the west, as well as to get that second transmission main. So while we are hindered by the length of contracts that many of these communities have with the city of Chicago, we believe there is work that we can do now to position ourselves again to grow the business, to look at what that per 1,000-gallon rate is in order to bring in additional dollars to support infrastructure improvements within the city of Evanston.
Alderman Grover?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Bobkowitz and Mr. Stoneback. It's clear that these communities are going to need water, and we might as well be the entity supplying them with the water. My question is, what regulates how much water Evanston can draw out of Lake Michigan? And are we looking at other kind of regulatory hurdles at our capacity for consumption?
Right now, it's based on each individual community has their own allocation for water usage. So these communities already have a water allocation for Lake Michigan water. It's just being supplied to them from Chicago, so that they own the allocation, not Chicago. So we would have no jurisdictional problem at all.
So the regulation goes to the consumer, not the supplier of the water.
That is correct.
Alderman Tandem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Other than the City of Chicago, is there anyone else positioned to do this sort of distribution or expansion of water services?
Potentially, the Village of Wilmette has a water treatment plant, although they're much smaller in size, and we're rated at 108 million gallon a day. Wilmette is 40 million gallons a day. Central Lake Counties has a water plant further north. They're around 40, 45 as well. So we are in a better position. And within our current footprint of our water plant, the technology has changed for water treatment. We could stay within our same footprint, we believe, and be able to double our capacity. So the possibility is there. And then perhaps some of the remediation work that we were talking about in the 1913 and 1923 plants, we just forget because we'll knock them down and put a different type of water treatment plant up in its place.
Alderman Jean-Baptiste.
Yeah. David, I thought we were governed by, or we are governed by, an international treaty that determines the amount of water that we can take from Lake Michigan.
There is an agreement, and based on that agreement, each community is given a water allocation.
Right.
And so Evanston has an allocation of a certain amount. That's what we can pull out for Evanston. Skokie has an allocation for the village of Skokie. We can take that out of Lake Michigan and provide it to Skokie for them, as well as any one of these other communities. They already all have a water allocation. Okay. Unlike if you might have read in the paper where there's communities up in Lake County that currently do not have a water allocation from Lake Michigan, and they're attempting to get one. And I see that as being much more of a challenge because of this international agreement. I don't believe the state of Michigan is going to allow anybody in the Chicagoland area to draw more water out if they don't currently have an allocation.
So the service that we would provide is to transmit the water?
That is to treat it
and
transmit it to the community, which is what Chicago is currently doing for them. And because Chicago had these massive rate increases within the past 3 years, that's what makes it feasible for Evanston to be able to do that at this time. That's why we weren't really looking at this in the past. It just wasn't cost economical. The other communities wouldn't want to purchase from Evanston because they were getting such a break from Chicago. Chicago raised their rates. We are very competitive with them.
Madam Mayor, perhaps I'll just take the last few slides. We're just getting a late hour here this evening, and Mr. Stoneback can just follow along. The last real component of this is what else can we do to support our water operation so that it is not on something that our ratepayers and property taxpayers have to focus on. Certainly promoting the outreach and use of Evanston tap water is something that we think that is not only good for the environment but also helps our water usage. Other additional public outreach with water conservation. We've talked several times this evening about the EPA Water Sense program, and certainly we want to continue to be supportive of that. Protection of the water supply is something that remains of important concern to us. And then in the area of alternative energy, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we currently spend $1.4 million on electricity and natural gas. And are there opportunities for us to look at alternative energy sources? We are also currently doing a small solar pilot project. There probably are opportunities for us to look more at solar. There are additional wind options, and the wind options are not only the offshore wind power, which is a subject on your council agenda for tomorrow evening, but are there opportunities for on land that may not be immediately adjacent to the city of Evanston, but in other locations nearby within the state of Illinois? Are there opportunities for us to invest in a wind farm there and use those savings to bring down the costs of operation? Because certainly we want to be mindful not only of the capital costs but the operating costs. We already believe that our operating costs are comparable, if not lower, to other water and sewer utilities in the area. But again, we want to make sure that we're simply not coming to you and saying we need to raise rates, we need to raise the property tax. There are other ways that we can be creative in addressing our long-term water and sewer fund financial needs. So, Madam Mayor, members of the council, thank you for your patience this evening to walk through the particulars here. We appreciate the comments that you've made about the various issues we brought before you. We would certainly welcome any additional comments that you have about what you've heard this evening regarding rates. Otherwise, we'll come back to you over the next few weeks and refine some of our projections, get some questions and answers that you've raised this evening, and hopefully during the months of May and June come to some conclusions on strategies that you'd like to pursue, and we can put those aside with an implementation date of January 1, and then look at other citywide CIP issues as well as operating issues for 2011.
There are no further lights. Thank you, Mr. Stone.
One more light, Madam Mayor.
I wasn't quick enough.
How much water main are we repairing now? Water line are we repairing? You want to do 1.5 per year. You think that's the wise thing to do? 1.5 miles.
That's correct. And we've
What are we doing now?
We've been meeting that for the past 5 years. This year, though, due to the budget restraints, I think we're only going to get in about 3/4 of a mile.
Okay. What did we do 5 years prior?
Very little. If we did any, it was in conjunction with the long-range sewer project. If we were putting a tunnel down the street and it already had a 100-year-old water main, we replaced the water main because we knew it would break as we put in the tunnel.
Thank you.
That Madam Mayor, we'll come back to you at a future meeting. There's one additional item on the agenda this evening before the executive session, and that is a report from me regarding a program evaluation that I'm proposing of the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services. In my experience as a city manager, I have found it very useful to look at the operations provided by each of our municipal departments over a period of time, and I think it would be important also to do the same here in the city of Evanston. The city has done this sort of thing in the past, and probably most notably is a study of the Community Development Department, which was conducted in 2006. In many cases, the study that was done in 2006 is very much a standard, where you bring in an outside consulting firm, spend quite a bit of money, and they come back with recommendations. While I believe it's important we review the services our departments provide, I don't believe it is practical at this juncture to follow the model that we did with the VK report in 2006. What I would like to propose instead is sort of an alternate plan where we would ourselves look at a department, certainly would look at one per year for the next while, perhaps increase the number per year, and do that ourselves. And I'm proposing moving forward this evening with an evaluation of our Department of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services. The reason I'm recommending moving forward with the Parks and Recreation Department at this time is that it's well-run, provides a wide range of services, and really is a cornerstone of the services that the city provides the community. In the last year with this new budget, the department has taken on several new assignments, which I don't believe have been fully examined, and I think there's an opportunity with those new assignments to look for ways that we can ensure that these excellent programs and services continue to evolve in the future so that they continue to meet the needs of our community. In order to start the process, Department Director Doug Gaynor and I looked at the department, really divided the department up into several programs and responsibilities: adult sports and classes, bus transportation, city facility management, cultural arts, day camps, the ecology center, forestry, lakefront activities, park and field maintenance, program marketing and registration, senior services, special events, youth services, and youth sports and classes. Again, looking at that large list, I think it's safe to say that many of those programs are very successful, are operating in a very efficient manner, and given the practicality of it, not all of these programs need to be looked at. However, I am recommending that we move forward over the next 12 months looking at 6 of those programs, and those 6 programs are cultural arts, forestry, program marketing and registration, senior services, special events, and youth services. And there are multiple reasons for each. The areas of youth services and senior services, with this new budget, the council has consolidated the strategic management of those services in this department, and I think there are opportunities for us now to take a step back to look at how we are delivering those services, and are there opportunities for us to improve them. In the area of cultural arts, again, it's one of our great strengths. When we look at what the assets that we have in cultural arts, one of those assets is the Noyes Arts Center. This center was developed, my understanding, originally as an incubator of sorts, and because of its great success, we have a number of resident companies there that perhaps would benefit from new facilities. What could we do to be mindful of looking for new facilities? What would we want to do to ensure that the Noyes Arts Center remains culturally vibrant? Certainly other arts programs, special events that are in the cultural arts area, we have done successfully in the past. What can we do to focus on those as we move forward in the future? In the area of forestry, we spend a significant amount of resources on trees in this community. Are we allocating those resources appropriately to care for trees? What is our clear mission for our forestry program? Are there best practices in other communities we can look to enhance the great quality of care that we provide trees in the city of Evanston? The area of special events, we have a number of successful special event programs, and as if the council will recall during your discussion on lakefront activities, while there was not a great desire to increase the number of special events at the lakefront, there was a lot of interest in perhaps identifying special events that could be developed in other parts of the community. So what could we do there to provide other neighborhoods, other areas of Evanston with special events? What are opportunities for us to pursue new funding models and sponsors for special events? And then the final area is the area of program marketing and registration. We have a large operation, as you all know, regarding classes. We have a program catalog that we mail to every household in Evanston. Unfortunately, our internet registration is not as widespread with our users as possible, so the costs associated with program marketing and registration, in my opinion, are perhaps larger than they need to be. What could we do to look at other models that other communities are using? What are best practices? And again, how can we better use the internet for program marketing and registration? So, Madam Mayor, members of the council, we've not talked about this previously, but again, I believe separate from the budget cycle, it's important to look at the efficiency and effectiveness of all of our city departments, and I think at this point 1 per year would make sense. I'm recommending that we move forward with such a review of our Department of Parks, Recreation, Community Services over the next 12 months, focusing on the 6 areas I've just described. I would like to get some council direction specifically on the role of the City Council in reviewing these recommended areas of evaluations. Do you believe it would be appropriate to bring back our findings to council subcommittees? Would the full council like to be part of the review of any work that we do? Again, I don't believe there's a specific model here, so would ask for some council direction, and then a year from now would come back to you after the budget process to take up another 1 or 2 departments, and then continue that process until we've evaluated all of our operating departments over the next several years.
Thank you. Alderman Burris, did you have?
I believe Mr. Bopkowitz is asking for direction on ideas on whether to go to committee or full council.
Yes.
Yes. It seems like this is such a large undertaking that it makes some sense to come to full council versus picking which committee to go to. I believe probably all of us are touched in one way or another by this department and would like feedback or to be able to give feedback.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson?
And if during the course of the process we could get some sort of, I guess, opportunity to give some feedback early on, whether it's a questionnaire or something like that, because a lot of times we'll get the report and we'll have to us what are obvious comments or complaints that we receive on a regular basis, and to get that in at the outset, I think would be helpful for everybody.
Thank you. Alderman Grover?
Thank you, Mayor. And is there a way to include then other stakeholders, so to speak, in the process of evaluating this programmatic review? And I'm thinking perhaps about even enrolling the expertise of someone at Kellogg to review some of our programs, others who might do it.
Certainly, and Alderman Grover, members of the council, you certainly have a number of standing committees and commissions that cover a number of these areas as well. Again, with the council's concurrence to move forward with this, we could come back with individual plans as how we would undertake each of these various areas, because they're very diverse parts of what the department does.
Alderman Nguyen?
Mr. City Manager, do you envision these? I would imagine these should be special meetings involving the whole council, and I can't imagine that we could cover this all in one meeting.
No. So I think, and that's why this is a 12-month work plan, which we would try to get as much as we could get done prior to the budget process in the fall. Likely would have some pieces that would trail into the beginning of 2011. So given the amount of time that would be involved, we'd try to spread it out so that it would fit the overall council schedule.
City Manager, did you get enough direction?
I believe I have.
All right. Alderman Wilson, do you want to make a
I
motion?
have a motion to convene into executive session pursuant to 5 Illinois compiled statutes 120/2A. I move that the City Council convene into executive session to discuss agenda items regarding personnel, litigation, and minutes. These agenda items are permitted subjects to be considered in executive session and are enumerated exceptions under the Open Meetings Act.
Thank you. City Clerk, could you?
Second.
City Clerk, could you call the roll? Alderman Jean-Baptiste.
Alderman John Baptiste. Yes. Alderman Nguyen. Yes. Alderman Wilson.
Yes.
Alderman Holmes. Aye. Alderman Tindem. Yes. Alderman Grover. Yes. Alderman Rainey. Yes. Alderman Burris. Yes. Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
9-0, the motion passes.